You. Yes, the one who woke up today convinced the story ended, who looked in the mirror and whispered, "Maybe I'm done." I see you. I see the weight you carry, like architecture, no one designed you to hold. But here's what I know about endings. They're usually just poorly timed intermissions. You're not at the epilogue. You're standing at the edge of a rewrite, and the pen is still in your hand. You've been here before, haven't you? This place where exhaustion feels like wisdom, where giving up masquerades as acceptance. You tell yourself it's maturity, this quiet surrender to what is. You've rehearsed the lines so many times they sound like the truth. I'm too old for this. I missed my window. The world moved on without me. And maybe you've even convinced yourself that feeling this way is somehow noble, like you're being realistic, grounded, practical. But let me tell you what I've learned. Building rockets that people said would never fly, creating companies that experts claimed would fail within months, pursuing ideas that made everyone around me uncomfortable. The voice that tells you it's over? That voice is almost always early. It shows up precisely when transformation is about to begin, disguised as prudence, dressed in the reasonable clothes of caution. You feel it in your body, don't you? This heaviness. It sits in your chest like gravity increased overnight. You wake up and the first thought isn't possibility. It's inventory. An inventory of what didn't work, who didn't stay, which dreams already died. You've become an archaeologist of your own disappointments, carefully cataloging every failure, every wrong turn, every moment you chose trust and got betrayal, chose hope and got silence. Society taught you this, whether you realize it or not. They taught you that women have expiration dates on dreams, that there's a timeline for love, for career pivots, for starting over. They built invisible walls around your years and labeled them too late for this, should have done that already, past the point of new beginnings. And you, being intelligent, being observant, started to internalize these constructs as if they were laws of physics rather than social inventions. I watch this happen to brilliant people all the time. They start measuring their lives against arbitrary standards, like against Instagram highlight reels, against the curated success stories that flood their feeds. They forget that most breakthroughs happen in the dark, that most meaningful transformations occur in private, that the most important revolutions begin in a single mind deciding that the narrative can change. You've been carrying other people's doubt like it's your responsibility. Your mother's worry, your ex's judgment, your friend's subtle implications that you should settle or be realistic. You've absorbed these voices until they sound like your own thoughts, until you can't distinguish between genuine intuition and inherited fear. And here's the cruelest part. You've started to provide evidence for their case. You look at your past and cherry-pick the data that confirms you're finished, that proves you should stop trying. This is what trauma does. It's efficient. It teaches you to expect the worst so you're never surprised, to lower your expectations so you're never devastated, to stop wanting so you're never disappointed. It's a survival mechanism that worked when you needed it, but now it's operating like outdated software, running programs that were designed for a different era of your life. You're trying to navigate your future using maps drawn during your worst moments. The fear comes in waves, doesn't it? Some days you feel glimpses of possibility, brief windows where you think maybe, just maybe, there's still time. Then something small happens. A rejection, a reminder of age, a friend's success, and the window slams shut. The fear rushes back in, more convincing than ever, armed with new evidence, updated arguments for why you should stop believing in more. And the silence. God, the silence is its own kind of violence. The silence from people you thought would fight for you. The silence from opportunities you thought would materialize. The silence from the universe when you've been screaming into the void, asking for signs, for direction, for just one indication that you're on the right path. That silence has taught you to stop asking, stop wanting, stop hoping. You've become so good at protecting yourself that you've built walls that keep out everything pain, yes, but also possibility. You've developed armor so sophisticated that it deflects not just arrows, but also olive branches. You've created a fortress of self-sufficiency that's so complete, you've forgotten what it feels like to let someone in, to be vulnerable, to admit you still want things you're not supposed to want anymore. I see you measuring your worth by what you've lost, instead of what you've survived. You look at the job that didn't work out, the relationship that ended, the dream that died, and you call yourself a failure. But you're still here. You're still reading this. You're still capable of feeling disappointment, which means you're still capable of feeling hope. You haven't gone numb. You haven't checked out completely. There's still a part of you, however small, that wonders if maybe the story isn't over. That part of you, that tiny voice that still asks what if, that's the most important voice in the room. It's the signal in the noise. It's the ember that refuses to die, even though you've stopped feeding it, stopped protecting it, stopped believing in it. You think it's over because you're tired. And you are tired, legitimately exhausted from carrying weight you were never meant to carry alone, from fighting battles you didn't choose, from rebuilding after earthquakes that kept coming just when you thought the ground was stable. But fatigue isn't the same as finality. Rest isn't the same as retirement from life. The world told you that women of a certain age should want different things, quieter things, safer things. That ambition is for the young, that reinvention is for people who haven't already lived a whole life, that transformation is something you do once, in your 20s, and then you just maintain. But I've never met a person who stopped growing, who didn't also start dying. Not physically, but in every way that matters. You've been waiting, haven't you? Waiting for permission, for the perfect moment, for proof that trying again won't break you. But here's what I've learned: launching rockets, the perfect conditions never come. You adjust for wind, for weather, for 1,000 variables you can't control. You launch anyway. Because staying on the ground is a certain failure. At least in the air, you have a chance. Let me tell you what nobody talks about when they discuss resilience, transformation, starting over. They make it sound clean, like a software update version 2.0 of yourself, better and bug-free. But real change is messy. It's debugging yourself while you're still running, rewriting code while the program is live. You don't get to pause your life, fix everything, then restart. You rebuild the ship while you're sailing it. I've spent years studying how systems break and rebuild: companies, rockets, relationships, ecosystems. And here's what I've noticed: the systems that survive aren't necessarily the strongest. They're the most adaptable. They're the ones that can hold opposing truths simultaneously. They can be both broken and becoming, both ended and beginning. You contain multitudes. You always have. You can be exhausted and excited. You can feel finished and just getting started. You can mourn what was and build what's next. These aren't contradictions. They're the complexity of being human, of being alive, of being in motion even when you feel stuck. Think about how we approach problems in engineering. When a rocket fails, we don't declare the mission over. We study failure. We ask, what did this teach us? What data did we collect? What do we know now that we didn't know before? Every failure is information. Every ending is data. Your past isn't evidence that you're broken. It's research about what doesn't work, what you won't accept, what you've outgrown. You've been treating your history like a criminal record instead of like a resume of survival. You've been highlighting your mistakes instead of your adaptability. You've been focusing on the relationships that ended instead of your capacity to love deeply, to trust fully, to show up completely even when you were terrified. That's not a weakness. That's fucking extraordinary. I think about this with technology all the time. People see the final product, the car, the rocket, the innovation, and they think it emerged fully formed, perfect. They don't see the thousands of iterations, the prototypes that exploded, the designs that failed spectacularly. They don't see the version 17 that finally worked, the breakthrough that came after everyone else had given up. You're not a failed version. You're version 17, carrying all the wisdom of 16 previous attempts. The logic here is simple. Though living it is hard, you can't optimize a system while simultaneously believing it's fundamentally broken. You can't improve something you've already declared dead. And yet this is what you've been trying to do. Fix yourself while telling yourself you're beyond repair, grow while believing your growth window is closed, transform while insisting transformation isn't available to you anymore. Here's the shift. What if your exhaustion isn't proof that it's over, but proof that you've been running code that isn't designed for where you're trying to go? What if feeling like you can't keep doing this anymore is accurate? You can't keep doing this anymore. But that doesn't mean you can't do something anymore. Maybe the system is telling you it's time for new programming, not time to shut down. You've confused the end of a chapter with the end of the book. You've mistaken the closing of a door with the sealing of all exits. But life doesn't work like that. Life is a series of rooms. And yes, sometimes doors close behind you, sometimes they slam, but there are always more doors, always more rooms. The architecture keeps expanding if you keep moving. I've had moments where I thought I was done, moments where the company was hours from bankruptcy, where the rocket exploded for the third time, where every expert said I was finished. And in those moments, you know what the difference was between quitting and continuing? Not confidence, not certainty, just curiosity, just the thought. But what if I tried this one other thing? You don't need conviction right now. You don't need unshakable faith. You just need curiosity, just the willingness to ask, what if? What if the story isn't over? What if I'm not too late? What if the best parts haven't even started yet? What if I've been measuring my life against the wrong metrics? Think about how we measure success with space exploration. We don't measure it by how smoothly the first launch went. We measure it by whether we eventually reached the destination, by what we learned, by how we improved. The journey isn't supposed to be smooth. It's supposed to be educational. Your rough patches aren't failures, they're flight data. You've been so focused on the destination that you forgot to appreciate your own flight data. You've learned what doesn't work in relationships, that's valuable. You've learned which careers drain you, that's direction. You've learned which versions of yourself were performances, that's self-knowledge. This isn't a waste. This is wisdom accumulation. The realization I need you to have is this. Time isn't your enemy. Society's narrative about time is your enemy. The biological clock mythology, the age milestone pressure, the invisible deadline on dreams. These are social constructs, not universal laws. Yes, some things have physical constraints, but most of the limits you're experiencing are imagined, inherited, imposed. I'm going to tell you something controversial. You might be in your most powerful era right now, precisely because of what you've survived. You have data, you have experience, you have scars that taught you things smooth skin never could. You have the clarity that comes from having tried the wrong things, loved the wrong people, chased the wrong dreams. You know what doesn't work. That's rare. That's valuable. That's the foundation for knowing what does work. Young people have energy and time, sure, but you have something better. You have a bullshit detector that works. You can spot fake from real. You know which red flags actually matter. You've developed intuition that took decades to calibrate. You're not starting from zero, you're starting from informed. That's an advantage, not a deficit. The transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming more yourself than you've ever been allowed to be. It's about shedding the versions of you that were built to please others, to fit in, to not make waves. It's about letting the authentic architecture of your soul finally emerge without apologizing for its shape. You've been trying to force yourself into blueprints designed by other people, their timeline, their priorities, their definition of success. But you're not standard issue. None of us are. We're custom builds, every single one. And custom builds don't follow template instructions. They require different materials, different approaches, different timelines. What if the reason nothing has worked according to plan is because the plan was never yours? What if you've been trying to execute someone else's vision for your life, and your soul kept sabotaging it because it knew, even when you didn't, that this wasn't your actual path? I see this in innovation all the time. The most revolutionary ideas don't come from following the established playbook. They come from someone saying, everyone's doing it this way. But what if there's a completely different approach? Your life might require that kind of thinking. Not how do I fix what's broken, but what if I've been building the wrong thing entirely? The woman you're becoming doesn't need to fit into the space the old you occupied. She might need more room. She might need different conditions. She might need supports and structures that didn't exist in your previous life architecture. And that's not regression, that's evolution, recognizing its own requirements. You keep looking at other people's lives and wondering why yours doesn't look like that. But you're comparing your internal experience to their external presentation. You're comparing your rough draft to their published work. You're comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. It's not a fair comparison. It's not even a real comparison. Everyone is improvising. Everyone is scared. Everyone is making it up as they go. The difference is, some people have learned to do it with confidence, with the appearance of certainty. But appearance isn't reality. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's moving forward despite doubt. And you've been doing that your whole life. You just haven't been calling it confidence.
Here's the logical truth married to the emotional truth. You are simultaneously exactly where you're supposed to be and nowhere near where you're going. Both are true. You're standing at a checkpoint, not an ending. A waypoint, not a destination. The GPS is recalculating, but the route isn't canceled.
The most important code to rewrite is the story you tell yourself about what your data means. Same facts, different interpretation. Same history, different narrative. You went through all of that not because you're cursed, not because you're broken, but because you're being prepared. For what? You don't know yet. But preparation doesn't announce itself in advance. You only recognize it in retrospect. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take every piece of evidence you've been using to prove you're finished, and we're going to recontextualize it. We're going to look at the same data through a different lens. Not toxic positivity, not denial, but accurate reframing based on what actually predicts future success versus past performance. You say you're too tired. I hear you've been running unsustainable code, and your system is demanding an upgrade. Your fatigue is wisdom, not weakness. It's your body and mind saying the old way isn't working anymore. Listen to that. That's not failure. That's your internal guidance system functioning perfectly.
You say you've made too many mistakes. I hear you've gathered extensive research on what doesn't align with your authentic self. Each wrong relationship taught you about your non-negotiables. Each failed venture taught you about your actual values. Each disappointment refined your understanding of what matters. You're not damaged goods. You're a highly calibrated instrument.
You say you're starting too late. I hear you're starting with advantages that early starters don't have. You have context. You have comparison data. You have the wisdom to avoid entire categories of mistakes that trap people in their 20s for decades. You're not behind. You're informed. So I tell you about late starts. About being told you missed your window. I was told constantly that electric cars were a dead end, that private space exploration was impossible, that I was too late to these industries, that the window had closed. But windows are human inventions. Nature doesn't have windows. It has seasons, cycles, continuous opportunities for growth. You're not outside a window. You're in a different season, and different seasons grow different things. The transformation begins when you stop fighting what is and start building what's next. Not from a place of defeat, but from a place of data-informed decision-making. You have information now. You know things. Use it. Not to protect yourself from ever being hurt again, but to make better choices about where to invest your energy. Think about how we build sustainable systems. We don't build them to never fail. We build them to fail gracefully, to recover quickly, to learn and adapt. You've been trying to build a life that never fails. That's not possible. That's not even desirable. What you want is a life that fails forward, that treats setbacks as course corrections, that maintains forward momentum even through turbulence. You're going to have to make friends with uncertainty. I know you want guarantees. I know you want someone to promise that if you try again, it'll work out. But that's not how any of this works. Not with rockets, not with companies, not with life. You launch with probability, not certainty. You move forward with calculated risk, not guaranteed outcomes. But here's the thing. Staying where you are is also risky. Inaction has consequences too. The architecture of your next chapter isn't going to look like your last chapter. Stop trying to rebuild what was. Build what's needed now. What does the current version of you actually need? Not what you needed 10 years ago, not what you think you should need, but what would actually serve your growth right now. Maybe you need less, not more. Maybe you need simplicity, not complexity. Maybe you need depth, not breadth. Maybe you need to stop trying to be everything and allow yourself to be precisely what you are. even if it doesn't match anyone's expectations. I've learned that the most powerful innovations come from constraints, not from unlimited resources. You think your limitations, age, past, scars are liabilities, but constraints force creativity. They force you to find novel solutions. They force you to build differently than you would have if everything had been easy. Your constraints might be your competitive advantage. You're going to have to start small. I know you want the grand gesture, the dramatic transformation, the movie montage version where everything changes in 3 minutes with a soundtrack. But real transformation is quieter. It's daily. It's incremental. It's choosing slightly differently, then choosing that way again, then again, until the new choice becomes the default. Start with one thing, not your whole life. One thing. One pattern you're going to interrupt. One belief you're going to question. One habit you're going to shift. Don't try to rebuild everything simultaneously. That's how systems crash. You upgrade one component at a time, test it, make sure it's stable, then upgrade the next. What's the one belief that's hurting you most right now? The one that, if you could release it, would change everything else. Find that. That's your starting point. Maybe it's I'm too old. Maybe it's I'm too damaged. Maybe it's I missed my chance. Whatever it is, that's your first target for rewriting. Here's how you rewrite belief code. You don't argue with it directly. You don't try to convince yourself of the opposite. You just start collecting evidence for an alternative narrative. You look for proof that the old belief might not be universal law. You find examples in your own life and others' lives where the belief was proven wrong. You create space for doubt about your doubt. You're gonna have to get comfortable with being in transition, with not having arrived yet, with being in progress. Our culture hates this. Our culture wants before and after photos, clear endings and beginnings, transformation that's complete and packaged. But you're gonna be in the messy middle for a while. You're gonna be simultaneously grieving and building, ending and beginning, dying and being born. This is sacred work, this middle space. This is where alchemy happens. This is where the old you dissolves and the new you emerges. But it's uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. Growth is uncomfortable, change is uncomfortable, metamorphosis is uncomfortable. The caterpillar doesn't enjoy the chrysalis, but it's required. You're going to have moments where you think you were wrong to hope again. Moments where the old pain returns and you think, see, I was right to give up. Those moments will come. They're not proof that transformation isn't possible. They're proof that you're still human, still healing, still in process. They don't erase your progress. They're part of your progress. Here's what I need you to understand about setbacks during transformation. They're not failures of the process. They're features of the process. You're debugging complex code. Sometimes you fix one thing and something else breaks temporarily. You don't abandon the whole project because of a bug. You debug the bug and keep building. You're going to have to protect this transformation from people who are invested in your old story. Some people, maliciously, but out of their own fear, are going to try to talk you back into the box you're outgrowing. They're going to remind you of your age, your past, your limitations. They're going to suggest you're being unrealistic. You're going to have to develop boundaries that protect your becoming. This doesn't mean cutting everyone off. It means becoming selective about whose voice you allow into your decision-making process. Whose fears are you carrying? Whose limitations are you accepting as your own? Whose definition of possible are you operating within? You get to choose. You've always gotten to choose, but maybe you didn't know that. You know it now. The transformation is less about adding things and more about removing what was never yours. The expectations you internalized, the timelines you accepted, the definitions of success you adopted, the versions of yourself you performed to earn love. Strip all of that away. What's left? That's what you build from. That's your foundation. You're not becoming someone new. You're becoming more accurate yourself. The self that existed before the world told you who to be. The self that got buried under should and must and have to. The self that your soul has been trying to excavate for years. That self is still there, waiting, patient, ready. And here's the most radical part. You don't have to know the destination to start moving. You don't have to see the whole path take the first step. You just have to be willing to move in a direction that feels more true than where you currently are. That's it. That's enough. More will be revealed as you go. Trust is going to be your biggest challenge. Trusting yourself again after you've made choices you regret. Trusting life again after it's disappointed you. Trusting the process when you can't see the outcome. But trust isn't belief in a guaranteed result. Trust is willingness to keep going even in uncertainty. Trust is showing up, even when you don't know what showing up will yield. You've been waiting for proof before you trust. But that's backwards. Trust comes first, then proof follows. You have to move before you see where moving leads. You have to choose before you know if the choice is right. You have to risk before you know if the risk is worth it. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. So here we are, you and me in this moment where you get to decide, does the story continue or end? And I want you to really feel the weight of that decision, because it's yours, entirely yours, not your past's, not society's, not your critics or your doubters or even your own fears. Yours. If you decide it's over, it's over. I won't argue with that. You've earned the right to make that call. You've been through enough. You're tired enough. You have every logical reason to close the book and call it done. No one would blame you. No one could judge you. You've given enough, tried enough, hurt enough. But if there's any part of you, and I suspect there is, or you wouldn't still be here, reading these words, if there's any part of you that wonders what might happen if you gave it one more chapter, just one more attempt with different parameters, with adjusted variables, with the wisdom you have now, then you owe it to that part of yourself to find out. Not for anyone else. Not because you should. Not because giving up is weak. But because curiosity is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Because what if is the question that launches spaceships and builds companies and changes lives. Because you've come this far, survived this much, learned this deeply, and that kind of accumulated wisdom deserves a chance to be applied. I think about legacy a lot. Not just what we leave behind when we die, but what we leave behind in each moment we choose. Every decision is a legacy. A message to your future self about what you believe is possible. What legacy are you creating right now? One of surrender or one of continued courage? One of I tried everything or one of I stopped before I had to? Your future self is watching this moment. The woman you'll be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20. She's looking back at today, at this choice point, at this moment where everything could have changed. What do you want her to see? What do you want her to thank you for? What decision today will she look back on and say, that's when everything shifted? I've made a lot of bets in my life. Bets on technology, on teams, on myself. And you know what I've learned? The bets that matter most aren't the ones with the highest probability of success. They're the ones that, if they work, change everything. They're asymmetric bets. Limited downside, unlimited upside. What's your asymmetric bet? What's the thing that, if it worked, would transform everything? Maybe it's believing in yourself again. Maybe it's trusting that love is still possible. Maybe it's pursuing the dream you thought you were too old for. Maybe it's simply deciding that your story gets to continue on your terms, not on society's timeline. Whatever it is, the downside is contained. You already know what giving up feels like. But the upside? The upside is everything you haven't experienced yet. Time is strange. We think we understand it, but we don't. We think it's linear, finite, running out. But time is also expansive, regenerative, abundant. You have time. Maybe not infinite time, but enough time. Enough time to try something new. Enough time to build something meaningful. Enough time to experience the thing you thought you'd missed. Enough time to become the person you've been trying to become. I want you to think about this. What if the best version of your life requires the worst things you've been through? What if you had to survive all of that to develop the capacity, the wisdom, the strength to handle what's coming? What if this has all been preparation, not punishment? What if your scars are actually credentials? The universe is efficient. It doesn't waste anything. Your pain wasn't wasted. Your struggles weren't meaningless. They were currency, investment in your development. They bought you something: awareness, resilience, clarity, depth. You paid a high price. Now use what you bought. Don't let the investment go unused. You're standing at the intersection of everything you've survived and everything you could become. That's a powerful place. That's a rare place. Most people never get here because they quit earlier or they never question the narrative they were given. But you're here. You made it this far. You survived everything that tried to stop you. That alone is extraordinary. Think about what that means. You've already done the impossible multiple times. You've already survived things you thought would kill you. You've already rebuilt after devastating losses. You've already found strength you didn't know you had. Why would you doubt yourself now? You have the best evidence possible that you can handle hard things. You've been handling them all along. The woman you're becoming doesn't need to be fearless. She needs to be brave. And bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward with fear riding shotgun. It's saying, I'm terrified, and I'm doing it anyway. It's acknowledging the risk and taking it anyway. It's accepting that you might fail, and trying anyway. Failure is temporary. Regret is permanent. You can recover from trying and failing. You can't recover time. You can't recover the years you spent wondering what if. You can't get back the experiences you denied yourself because you decided it was too late. The only real failure is stopping before you have to. Quitting before the universe actually requires it. Here's what I know about building the future. It belongs to people who refuse to accept that their best days are behind them. It belongs to people who treat age as accumulated advantage, not expired opportunity. It belongs to people who understand that transformation doesn't have a deadline. It belongs to people like you. People who've been beaten down and gotten back up. People who've been told no and kept asking. People who've been counted out and proved everyone wrong. You don't need permission. You don't need validation. You don't need someone else to believe in you before you believe in yourself. You just need to decide, I'm not done yet. That's it. That's the whole decision. Not, I will succeed. Not, I will definitely find what I'm looking for. Just, I'm not done yet. There's more. I'm gonna find out what happens next. The ending you write today doesn't have to be permanent. You can revise it tomorrow. You can change your mind next week. You can adjust course next month. But the decision you make right now matters because it sets direction. It determines whether you're moving toward possibility or away from it. It decides whether you're expanding or contracting. I want you to choose expansion. Not because it's easier. It's not. Not because it's guaranteed. It's not. But because expansion is how we grow. Because contraction is how we die, slowly while still breathing. Because the alternative to trying again is accepting that this is it, this is all there is, this is where your story ends. And I don't believe that. I don't think you believe it either. You've been operating from scarcity of time, of opportunity, of possibility. But what if you operated from abundance? What if you treated yourself like a renewable resource instead of a depleting one? What if you approached your future like an engineer approaches a problem, with curiosity, with iteration, with the understanding that the first solution might not work, but the process of trying produces data that leads to better solutions? Your life is a prototype, always has been, everyone is. We're all building custom lives with no instruction manual, figuring it out as we go. You're not behind. You're exactly where your unique path has led you. And from here, the path continues forward. It always does. The only question is whether you're walking it or standing still. I see you. I see your exhaustion and your hope fighting each other. I see your doubt and your desire to wrestle for dominance. I see the woman who's tired of trying and the woman who isn't ready to give up. They're both real. They're both valid. But only one of them gets to write the next chapter. Choose the one who still has questions. Choose the one who wonders what if. Choose the one who survived everything to get here. Choose the one who knows deep down that it's not over yet. Choose the one who's reading these words and feeling something shift, something open, something whisper maybe. That whisper is your future calling. It's a possibility of knocking, It's life saying not yet, there's more. Listen to it. Trust it. Follow it. Not blindly, not recklessly, but with the wisdom you've earned, the strength you've built, the clarity you've developed. You are not a finished product. You are a work in progress, and progress means moving forward. It means the next version. It means iteration, improvement, evolution. It means treating today as a data point, not a conclusion. It means staying in motion even when you can't see where motion leads. The ending isn't written yet. You're holding the pen. The page is open. The story continues if you let it, and I think you should let it. Not because I know it will be easy, not because I can promise it will work out, but because you didn't survive everything you survived just to stop at the threshold of becoming. Because your scars earned you the right to try again. Because it's not over until you decide it's over, and I don't think you've decided that yet. So don't decide it's over. Decide it's intermission. Decide it's transition. Decide it's transformation. Decide it's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Decide it's the chapter where everything looks darkest before the breakthrough. Decide it's anything except over. Because here's the truth. You asking the question, what if it's not over, is evidence that it's not over. Dead things don't question. Finished things don't wonder. Growing things ask, what if? Becoming things question the narrative. Alive things seek possibility, even in endings.
You're alive. You're asking. You're here.
That's not an ending. That's preparation for the beginning. Your story doesn't end when you're tired. It transforms when you're ready.